Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Please like and subscribe. Subscribe if you want Aston Villa to make the Champions League this season. If you don't subscribe, it means you want Birmingham City to win the Championship. Who the hell wants that? Birmingham City fans themselves don't seem to want that. What's going on in the world of Aston Villa? Well, I've done an interview with Tom Green from the Boro Breakdown podcast and Middlesbrough podcast. Lovely, lovely guy. And he gave me a very detailed description of Morgan Rogers, the Middlesbrough forward who Aston Villa have been linked with and apparently made two bids for that have been rejected. So if you want to check that out, that will be coming in a second. I'll cut to that from this. But I thought I would just start this off actually by bringing up the fact that the Telegraph, Matt Law, has an article that's just been dropped, like a mixtape from your favorite musician. The headline: Chelsea eye surprise move for Aston Villa striker Jhon Durán. 20 years of age, £18 million we signed him for a year ago, and there has been a lot of noise in the last few months about certain fallings out, things not quite been right. He wants more game time. He hasn't. He has played quite a bit for Aston Villa. He's played quite a lot for somebody his age, 19, 20. He's had a lot of game time in the Premier League as a striker as well. So I think he's on a good trajectory at Villa, and the opportunities will keep mounting as he scores more goals. The problem is Ollie Watkins is the real deal. He's the finished article, and he does exactly what we need at Aston Villa. Jhon Durán just has to bide his time. Now, if he doesn't feel like he's getting enough game time, well, then you can't really argue with that. I mean, fair enough. If he wants to play more, wants to go somewhere else to find that game time, well, then that's just the way it is. Fine. Uh, you can't knock his ambition and his belief. It's what you want to see in young players. But to go to Chelsea, Carney Chukwuemeka went there. I think it was sort of coming together for Chukwuemeka at the start of this season at Chelsea, but got an injury in it. Haven't seen him since. Wasted a year last year, I think, there. It may yet come good for Carney at Chelsea. As for Jhon Durán, if he were to go to Chelsea, would he get more game time there, competing with Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson compared to what he gets at Aston Villa? Not convinced. Not really convinced by that. Risky is how I would put it. I think Durán has a very high ceiling. I think he has the raw ingredients to be a real high class striker. I've seen him hold the ball up in games live in person where the defenders couldn't deal with him. And I'm talking about Everton defenders here, big physical units like James Tarkowski, Michael Keane, who's not played that well this season, but they were trying to mark him with Durán's back to goal. Durán couldn't get near him. On top of that, there's been moments where he's shown electric pace, moments where he's made good runs, and one or two finishes that have been absolutely class. Like the finish against Crystal Palace was unbelievable, and the header he got away at Lechia Warsaw again was top quality. So there are hints that there's a real top quality striker there with a very high ceiling, and there is thinking within European football that he is a striker who can go very, very far. That said, he's extremely raw. He is not ready to lead the line for Aston Villa consistently ahead of Ollie Watkins. That's just a fact. And if basically Watkins is the main man, if you're going to bring in a striker, to be sort of his backup, who's it going to be? Well, there's two options there, isn't there? Either it's young, potential, willing to take their opportunity when it comes, or it's somebody who's a bit older, happy to sort of chill out on the bench a little bit and then come on and do the job when they need to. So I think he should just stick it out to the end of the season at Villa. I think for Aston Villa ourselves, if we were to sell him now, it would have to be for a big profit. and it would have to be um, there'd have to be a replacement for him because, if Ollie Watkins gets injured, in the run in this season, or is absent for any games, or we need a substitute at some point in the game, not having anyone to replace Jhon Durán looks quite risky. And I was supportive last season of selling Danny Ings, very supportive of it. I think that's proven totally correct. Um, but there was a risk at that point as well that were Watkins to get injured, it might leave Villa a bit light. And also, we, trimmed the squad down. There were areas you feared in the squad that Villa might not cope. But if Villa were to sell Duran now, I'd like to think just with the push for the top four we're going through right now, that we'll bring somebody in. Hopefully, would that be Morgan Rogers? As Tom Green explains to me in the interview that I'll bring it up in a second, he's yeah, he's got something for sure, but he's potential. But as is Jhon Durán. Durán is a player of potential. Um, so yeah, I do believe in Durán. I'd really love him to stay at Villa at least until the end of the season. But if whatever's going on off the pitch, there's a lot of noise. If whatever's going on off the pitch isn't working out for either party, on the Villa side or on Duran's side, well then if he needs to move, he needs to move. And that's just, football rolls on. And if you get a big profit for him, well then sure thing. But yeah, like I say, I'd like to see a replacement if he does go. Anyway, aside from that, I've just had an email, as has everybody else, I'd assume, from Chris Heck himself. Chris Heck's actually emailed all of us, and it says AV 150 countdown to 150 years, and he's announced the honorary board. Exciting stuff. It's going to include Thomas Hitzelsperger. We all love Hitz. Haven't seen him around at Villa for a long old time, so it's nice to see him back. Brian Little, Ian Taylor, Dennis Mortimer, club legends, athlete Catherine Merry, well-known Villa fan, Guy Rippon, Guri Nandra, Aaron Jones, Rob Bishop, know him well from Twitter, Pam Bridgewater, David Bridgewater, and Mervyn King, former governor of the Bank of England as well, another well-known Aston Villa fan, Marissa Ewers. So a lot of great diversity there, a lot of a celebration of Villa's past, which needs to be done during the 150 anniversary. You got to celebrate, the club's traditions, and some fans who have really contributed positively to Aston Villa. And as I say, diversity, people who represent different groups within the Aston Villa fan base. That is fantastic to see. Really happy with that. And that's I think that's a really nice touch from the club. For as we build towards the 150th anniversary, which should be very exciting indeed. Anyway, here is Tom Green from the Boro Breakdown podcast to give us the lowdown on the man himself, Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers, this has been rumbling now for about a week or so. What's the feeling about a potential move for Rogers among the Boro fan base?
I think firstly, it kind of came and took us by surprise. It wasn't something we expected 6 months into his contract. Obviously, he was fairly decently rated when he went to City, and he's been out on loan a couple of times. Not a big name by any stretch, but one we knew about when he signed for the club. And really, I think a lot of people would be disappointed to see him leave, especially after 6 months, because it's just around now where it looks like he's starting to kind of show what he's really all about, and really kind of solidify himself within the team. But there is a sort of acceptance from our fan base now, which we wouldn't have got a couple of years ago, in that we know that the club is trying to become more sustainable, trying to emulate that kind of like Brentford, Brighton model. So I think there is a sort of acceptance that if we get an offer that is too good to turn down, and it looks like we might actually replace Rodgers, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Okay, and just how good is Rogers?
I wouldn't say he's ready to get in your starting 11 yet, which makes the rumors that he was kind of the top target for Emery, and and everything like that a little bit confusing because you would be paying for potential at this point. He's really grown into the team over the course of this season. He's playing a number 10 role mostly, and his strengths are really kind of driving with the ball. And we saw another one of his strengths in his vision last week against Rotherham. Kind of just flicked it up and backheeled it into the path of Marcus Forss to get our equaliser. He is a good player, but I still don't think he's anywhere near his best at Boro. So if you guys were to sign him, you might still be waiting a couple of years before that pays off fully.
Okay, and whereabouts does he tend to play for Middlesbrough, and where sort of on the pitch can he function?
Well, we like to see him around the number 10 position, which is where he's played most of his football, I would say. He did start the season playing as our kind of like lone striker. We essentially play a really kind of fluid, asymmetrical 4-2-3-1 formation. And to start the season, we had no strikers, so Rodgers was playing there. He's had a bit of experience in playing up front for us this season. And I think he was actually signed as a winger when we got him. He's played for Blackpool, I think it was Lincoln, the other one who have both kind of said to us on the podcast. Fans from both clubs said he was deployed as a winger for them. So he is quite versatile across the front line, really.
Okay, so the versatility, that slightly sounds a little bit like Ollie Watkins, who, of course, we got from the Championship when he was at Brentford, and he tended to play, I think it was more on the left wing and up front. So I wonder if there's maybe something in the data that's suggesting to Unai Emery, Monchi, our sporting director, and the scouting department as well, that there's something to work on here. You know, he's played 33 games this season, 7 goals, 9 assists. That's not bad for a 21-year-old, but it's also not, doesn't scream out that this guy's going to be the next Pele or anything like that. But, is there anything about him that you think sticks out and you think he does have raw potential and you could actually see him reaching a much higher level than he's currently playing at?
Well, I think one stat there that's not been mentioned, and it's probably not one that's well known. There's a kind of well known data guy for the Championship mainly on Twitter who posted this out a couple of weeks ago. He was actually top for chance creation in the Championship. I think he was top for chance creation. Anyway, he was top of that. I don't know if it was kind of under a certain age or something, but he was at the top of that list. So maybe that is in the underlying data that, like you say, Emery and your sporting director have been looking at. In terms of his ability, I think he's very good at dribbling with the ball. I think one thing about him, which you don't get with a lot of other, we'll say wingers, although dribblers could also apply to it. He's actually fairly big as well. I'm pretty sure he's only around 6'3" or 6'4". So probably not your typical winger build, and he does have that ability to hold players off. There have been a couple of examples at the Riverside this season, especially where he's just been driving through the middle, but he's been able to kind of hold those players off. So I would say that's a definite plus point for him. He's got good vision, a very good range of passing. Like I say, last week at Rotherham with the back heel touch, and he's had a couple of others as well. I think one of them might have been against Preston. Don't quote me on that one, but it was like a lovely little dink through into the box and just into the attacker's path for a goal. So he does have a very good range of passing as well. Like I said, this doesn't come off all the time, so it's probably still going to be a couple of years before you can look at him as being close to being the finished article. But I would say his abilities then would be far more than what they are now.
Okay. And do you think there's anywhere in particular that he could improve? Is there any sort of weaknesses to his game? Does he ever leave you a bit frustrated about anything?
I would. I mean, it's kind of unfair in the position he plays, but his shooting's a bit hit and miss.
Okay.
you may have seen a few highlights in the Carabao Cup where he's pinging them into the top corner against Exeter from about 25 yards out, and he scored a really good goal last night against Chelsea. But then there's been uh, other chances he's had, easier chances which haven't came off for him. So probably being a bit more consistent with his shooting, but I think long range shooting he typically has that nailed down.
Okay, and he sounds like quite a strong player. He can hold players off. He's got versatility as well. If I was to guess, I'd say he's coming in as somebody who long term potentially they could mold into a striker, but also somebody to compete with Jacob Ramsey on the left. Ramsey's been injured a lot this season, so if Rodgers can play sort of on that sort of, we play a very narrow midfield. It's not really a left winger, but it's kind of on the left hand side of the midfield.
Yeah.
If he can play there and up front, I can definitely see why. Villa are drawn to him, but ultimately it would be stepping into the Premier League, and it feels like the gap between the Champions and the Premier League is constantly like growing apart a little bit at the moment. Do you think he'd be able to make the jump up to the Premier League? Do you think he's got what it takes to play there?
Honestly, right now, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, I think in this transfer, you guys would be paying for potential, which I think may put Villa off in terms of the fee that we're apparently commanding. Because, like I say, he's still in his first 6 months of his contract. We're kind of under no pressure to sell, and he's also said he's not going to force a move. So, if it's kind of getting that balance, isn't it, of what fee you'd be willing to pay for someone with potential at that point. Like I say, I don't think he's going to be the finished article or anywhere close to that for another year or two. I think if you guys were to sign him, he'd probably be a bench player and kind of working his way into the team from there. He might, given a few 20-minute appearances and obviously the work that would be going in on the training ground, he might develop a little bit quicker there. But I don't see him transferring to Villa and stepping straight into the first team at all.
Okay. Yeah, he's. I think Unai Emery's MO in the past has been to improve players. And I think every single player who's at Aston Villa since he took over a year and a bit ago has just gone up levels really. So I'd be quite excited, I think, at the thought of Rodgers working with Emery if it ever came to pass. But something else as well, I could imagine Middlesbrough thinking, well, if we don't need to sell right this instant, we could probably wait to the summer, see what Rodgers does for the rest of the season, and then there might be a bit of a bidding war if he, keeps suggesting to all the Premier League scouts, this is a guy you got to get in. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what Middlesbrough do this transfer window. But Tom, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you, really informative, and honestly, really appreciate you coming on. Where can we find you and the Boro Breakdown online?
So I'm at Tom Green 52 on Twitter, and Boro Breakdown is give me 2 seconds. I'll grab this because I always forget it. I think it's yeah, there we go. At Boro_breakdown. I always forget if there's a the in front of that, but yeah, at Boro_breakdown on Twitter. We're also on all the standard podcast platforms and available on YouTube as well.
Okay, brilliant, Tom. Thanks a lot for coming on.